Have you guys had No Sleep Till Brooklyn stuck in your head all week? The song by the Beastie Boys that I think VCU Hoops used for their post-game video the other day on their social media. Stuck in your heads too? Or is that just me? It has been stuck in my head all week. Also Empire State of Mind, which I think multiple bands have played here, which is obviously a New York anthem. But those two songs have been stuck in my head all week and will continue to be. Because VCU 66, St. Joseph 60. I'm coming at you from the Barclays Center media room. I just finished up my story for the paper tomorrow and got all the press conferences uploaded and everything. VCU is moving on to defend their Atlantic 10 tournament title and play for a berth in the NCAA tournament tomorrow at 1 o'clock against Duquesne, which beat St. Bonaventure 70-60 in the second semifinal. Man, what a magical run at this point for VCU on the heels of such a turbulent season. 5 players back from your roster last year, a new coach, a wild offseason, Joe Bamisille's eligibility battle, Sean Barstow's injuries. This has been such a turbulent season for VCU, but they have a chance now with a win tomorrow to make it a smashing success at the end of the day. I mean, so many people said not coming into the year, but throughout the year, that it was a transitional season and that, you needed to be patient with Coach Odom and his staff because they had a lot of moving parts to work with, and that was absolutely true. And so for them to be at this point, with so much turnover and so much new is incredibly impressive. And Ryan Odom and his VCU staff and all of these players deserve an enormous tip of the cap. 66-60. St. Joseph's gave a heck of a fight. Eric Reynolds is a hell of a player. He proved that when the Hawks knocked out Richmond. I think Reynolds had 30 in that game just a few days ago. That quarterfinal round was so wild with all 4 top seeds falling. It was college basketball at its finest. The parity in the A10 was on full display. The Big East tournament is going on over at Madison Square Garden. I went up to Rucker Park, which a lot of you probably will have seen yesterday on the after media availability during the morning to go get some shots up and meet people at one of the most famous, if not the most famous, community basketball courts in the world that NBA legends have played at, some of whom's origins can be traced back to there. So that was an amazing experience. I'm going to have a story on that coming out early this week about a day of wandering around New York and going to Rucker Park and kind of looking for basketball's roots and spirit in a city that loves it so much that's often referred to as the Mecca of hoops. But today, St. Joseph's, neither team could hit from outside in the first half, right? It was a free-flowing first half. There weren't a whole lot of foul calls, and I appreciated that. The crew came over from the Big East tournament, I think, that officiated this game today. So it was so different from the first couple of games. I mean, I'm not an officiating expert, and I couldn't tell you all of the differences between the personnel in those two crews, but man, did they call the game differently. There were so many fouls in those first couple of games, and the game was not played differently today. It was physical. Players were doing the same things. It was just refs who saw the game incredibly different to the ones who refed the first couple of rounds of this tournament, because they let them play today, and that for me, and I imagine for a lot of you out there, is my kind of basketball. Nobody comes to games to watch people shoot free throws. Let them play physical, especially this time of year. That's always what I believed in. And so I enjoyed that first half from that perspective. But man, neither team could get things going from outside. I think St. Joseph started 0 of 9. VCU didn't make a 3 in the first half. They were 0 of 10. And VCU trailed, even though they had a lot of momentum for a period of that half. I think the largest lead was 21-12. Right, Max couldn't miss today. Max Scholga led VCU with 25 points, 10 of 11 from the field, which ties an A10 tournament record for shooting percentage at 91%. It's been done 3 times now. And VCU led 21-12 after I think Zeb had a transition layup. Sean had a really good game today. Sean Barstow finished with 13 points and passed the 1,000 point threshold for his career, which was very cool. That came in the second half. We'll get to that in a second here. But neither team hitting from outside, right? So it was a. I think coming into this game, I said to people yesterday, maybe it'll be first to 80, and I certainly expected more of an offensive outburst, and we kind of got that in the second half. But St. Joe's led at halftime, and then VCU coming out of the break, 2 huge shots. Sean Bairstow and Max Scholga both hit threes, and I think that was enormous for, after struggling shooting outside so much in the first half, for them to come out of the locker room and get things going from outside a little bit. Max and Sean, I asked them about it after the game, and they both said that was key, just to get some confidence going out of the locker room quick there. But man, St. Joseph's, to their credit, Reynolds is a heck of a player. Cameron Brown was really good today. He finished with 13 points, and they would not go away. We had 4 different ties down the stretch there, I think. It's in my story here somewhere. Let me get to it. Let me pull up the story. At 55 was one of them. Let me get here in the points in the story. I'm sorry, I'm getting to it here. Okay, at 43, 45, 52, and 55, there were ties. But St. Joe's last lead was at 39-37 with 12:54 to play, right? And then a Toby Lawal-Borden bucket on a reverse finish followed. That kick started a 6-0 run that culminated in a Scholga drive and finish, and VCU was up 43-39 with 11:37 to play. St. Joseph's hung around, and it was a close game throughout the latter stages, but they never led again. VCU was able to keep them a little bit at arm's length. The fans, by the way, a tip of the cap to Ram Nation and everyone who traveled up. Obviously, those first couple of rounds are tough with them being middle-of-the-day games in the week, and they were relatively sparsely attended, although the VCU contingent was still really good and outnumbered the opposing fans in every game that the Rams played. But then today, I mean, it was like 70-30. I would say the ratio of VCU fans in here, they were loud, and that certainly energized the team in the second half. Sean talked about how much that helped them, especially in the latter stages of that game, because it got nervy. Right, it got nervy. What was it? I think it's 61-60, right? Brown hits a 3, or maybe it was Rasheer Fleming. He was really good too. One of them hits a 3. Yeah, Brown hits a 3. Cameron Brown. They had 2 Browns on their team to make it 61-60. With a minute to go, it was still anyone's game. There was a lot of nervous energy in here. From a neutral perspective, it was college basketball at its finest, right? 2 teams who know they're not going to earn at-large bids to the NCAA tournament. You're going to have a bid stealer out of the 4 teams that were left headed into today's semifinals, and that just creates such an awesome atmosphere of desperation, right, from both teams and from both fan bases, and that was palpable throughout the arena today. And you could really feel it in that moment when it was 61-60. And then Joe Bamaseal, who let's look at Joe's stats, only 5 points he had today. He couldn't get it going. Joe can obviously be such a streaky scorer when he gets hot, and he couldn't really find it today. But he had 3 steals. He contributed on the defensive end, and I know that was part of the narrative about Joe. He transferred to VCU. Is can he do it on the defensive end? We know he's a good scorer. Man, he did it on the defensive end today. And then in the key moment when they needed him the most, had a 2-handed dunk. I think he caught on the left wing, drove baseline, posterized a couple of St. Joe's defenders. That was pretty fun. That made it 63-60. And then the last sequence was frenetic. Because we had so few foul calls in this game, St. Joe's had to foul like 5 times to get it to the point where they could send VCU to the line, and that really, really hurt them in the waning moments of that game, because VCU just could keep taking time off the clock. There was like 4, I think, different inbounds plays in a sequence there, and big credit to Sean Bairstow, who had the tough job of being the inbounder on all of those. And VCU had to call a couple of timeouts in that sequence when they couldn't get the ball in. There was one thrown into the backcourt. There was kind of a jump ball at the top of the key thrown up to Zeb that he had to really get up for. And then eventually Scholga's fouled by a couple of guys. Some people were upset about that call, and I haven't seen a replay of it. I thought he got tackled. Some of the St. Joe's people were trying to call for a travel. I mean, he traveled, but it was because 2 dudes fell on top of him. Again, I haven't seen the replay again. That was very clearly a foul. And Max goes to the line, man, and with all the weight of Barclays Center on his shoulders, I of course had the Automaxic line in my head that I don't know who it is, but there's a fan at the Siegel Center who sits right behind me all season a lot of the time when Max is at the line, and he puts it up when the arena is hushed, they're yelling Automaxic before it goes in. And he is a phenomenal free throw shooter, and his ability to get to the line in late game situations has been so vital for VCU all year, right? And it was again today, and he sinks both of them for 65-60, and then VCU gets away with a 66-60 win. And this is a fascinating stat sheet if you haven't seen the stat sheet from this game, because when you really look at it, you would think that VCU won by more. 16-11 advantage in bench points, 8-2 in fast break points, 12-7 in second chance points, 42-26 in the paint, 13-8 points off turnovers. All VCU advantages. VCU led for 27-41, St. Joe's for just 5-12, although there were 12 ties in this game. We had a ton of ties, so St. Joe's got close a lot of the time, right, but could never really get over the line to take any kind of a commanding lead over VCU. It really did feel like VCU was kind of fending them off the whole game, and St. Joe's was the one fighting the uphill battle. They finished 8 of 27 from 3, which I guess at the end of the day is really why this game was close, because VCU only shot 4 of 20 from 3. Shulga was 3 of 4. So that was huge. Again, 10 of 11 from the field. That's outstanding. For a guy who only attempted 6 field goals in the first 2 games of this tournament and had 7 assists in the win over UMass and played the role of distributor, for him to just be able to flip that switch and all of a sudden be the dynamic scorer and shooter that everyone knows he is. Again, depending on what the defense is giving him, I couldn't tell you schematically what the big difference is with how Fordham and UMass approached Shulga. They obviously threw a lot of attention on him on the perimeter. They were trying to double the ball out of his hands, I suppose, is probably the basic answer to that, and throwing multiple bodies on him. St. Joe's didn't do that. St. Joe's tried to guard him straight up. And man, did Shulga make him pay for it, because they could not guard him. Also still had 3 assists, 3 steals, a 10 over plus minus. Man, that guy increasingly, it looks like, is going to be playing in the NBA before too long, because his game really lends itself to the modern professional game, and he's continuing to get NBA draft buzz in the latter stages of this season. And again, looking at the stat sheet, so St. Joe's had 19 assists. VCU only had 8. I guess that's a big part of how they stayed in the game, too. They were moving it around well. Had a good flow offensively in that second half and made the 8 threes. Reynolds had 4 of them. Cameron Brown had 3 of them. But Xavier Brown, 0 of 6 from 3. I think he had 21 points at the Siegel Center. That really hurt them today. He's an outstanding player. He's going to be an outstanding player. I think he's the A-10 Rookie of the Year. And he was great at the Siegel Center. He was not great today. 0 of 6 from 3, 1 of 7 from the field, 2 points. That killed St. Joe's, that he didn't have a good game today. So Reynolds 18 and Brown 13. Those are your only 2 scorers in double figures. And VCU in the second half was just clinical offensively, right? Much like that game, it was really kind of a similar game to the Siegel Center, right? Where I think VCU was down 27-21 at the Siegel Center at halftime and really struggled offensively in that first half. And here they were only down 2 points. It was 25-23, but they really figured it out in the second half and caught fire offensively, just the same as they did when they scored, 53 points in that second half against St. Joseph's at the Siegel Center. It was one of their best halves of the year. Today they shot 18 of 29 from the floor in the second half. That's 62%. That's going to get it done. And they got the buckets when they needed them the most. And they're moving on to play Duquesne for an A-10 title tomorrow. And I think that even though those teams only played once this year, Duquesne won 69-59 at the Siegel Center. But in hindsight, looking at it right now, I think that is clearly an advantage for VCU, because that was the only game that Max Shulga did not play all year. He missed it due to back spasms. That was a weird game, right? It was on senior night, and when the news of Max being out, I think it broke, about 30 minutes before tip. But the team found out that morning. The arena, all of the players, you could tell that everyone was just disheartened, and it felt like an uphill battle from the start. And that was an anomalous game, I would say, for VCU. And so they're a different team with Max Shulga out there. VCU has seen all of Duquesne's cards. Duquesne has not seen all of VCU's cards. And so I think that's certainly an advantage that Duquesne, with this really quick turnaround, has got to prepare for a very different VCU team than the one that they saw at the Siegel Center on March 5th. Man, how about it? This has been a magical run in Brooklyn. I'm going to leave you guys with a quote from Ryan Odom that I absolutely adored late in the press conference when he was asked about the turbulence of this season and all of the adversity that his VCU team has faced. And I think a reporter asked him, when did the switch flip for you guys? And with everything that you've been in the ups and the downs and the Norfolk State loss, that stands out as kind of the example of one of the lowest points of the season for VCU. The George Washington loss at the Siegel Center when they started conference play 0-2. If you'd have told VCU fans after those games that we'd be here right now on the Saturday before the A-10 final at Barclays Center, many of them would not have believed you. So that's a great testament to keep the faith, right? And when you know that a new coach and a new roster has a lot of moving parts and a lot going against them, give them time to adjust and be patient with them. There were many naysayers, at that point in the year, and even just a couple of weeks ago, or a week ago, when this team lost its last 3 games of the regular season to drop to the 5 seed. There were people saying crazy stuff like, is Ryan Odom the right guy for this job? And in hindsight, that sounds pretty stupid. I think it's a good testament to, you got to be patient. And especially when there's so many moving parts in the modern era of college basketball with the transfer portal and transients and everything, you've got to give players and coaches time to get settled. And specifically with this VCU team, you had to give them time for Joe Bamisteel and Sean Barstow to get back, right? And for all of the parts to get cohesive and to get used to one another, because I think that we all knew, if you were looking at it objectively, then you knew the entire season this VCU team had an unrealized ceiling and a lot of talent, and they have found it in Brooklyn when it has mattered most. So I'm going to leave you with this Ryan Odom quote about VCU's turnaround and everything they've been through this year. We got healthy and we got better. That's the goal of any team. You try to maximize your team, maximize the individuals, but ultimately get them playing for one another every second of every game. You see that with our team. We do have a true team. I love our team. This team, whether a guy's not getting any minutes or he's playing what Max played tonight, which was 34 minutes and 58 seconds, it doesn't matter. This team is all about winning, and that's what makes it fun. Other teams might have gone through as much as we've gone through over the course of the season from last April until now, but not many have gone through more. They should take great confidence in the adversity that they've had to work through. Our coaching staff has been there for these guys every second, believing in them and understanding that if we did get everybody back, we could have the making of a really, really good team. And boy, did they have the making of a really, really good team. And they have showed that ceiling when it has mattered most. And first-year coach Ryan Odom and his Rams are 1 win away from the big dance. We will see you tomorrow, everyone.